Schools of philosophy in Islamic thought, the peripatetic school. The word peripatetic comes from the Arabic word Mashshaiyya, which means one who walks a lot, derived from the root mashi, meaning to walk. As a philosophical term, it translates the Greek word peripatetikos, referring to someone who follows Aristotle's philosophical views. In other words, it refers to Aristotelian thinkers within the Islamic world and the school of philosophy they established. This school of philosophy is called the Peripathetic school or Peripathetism. In Athens, Aristotle founded a school of philosophy called the Lykeion. He provided his students with both mental and physical education. His method of teaching while walking in the school's spacious corridors was called Peripathetism. Over time, this word came to represent the philosophical system of philosophers who based their teachings on Aristotle's ideas. At the Lyceum, which Aristotle founded and led for 12 years, subjects like logic, physics, metaphysics, ethics, politics, and literature and poetry were taught. Although more than 20 philosophers were educated at the Peripatetic school in the 2 centuries after Aristotle, none reached his level. After Andronicus of Rhodes compiled and published Aristotle's works, interest in peripatetic philosophy resurged. The oldest surviving Aristotle commentaries from this period belong to Alexander of Aphrodisias. Alexander of Aphrodisias drew upon Plato's philosophy while explaining Aristotle's views on reason and knowledge. He brought a new dimension to peripatetic philosophy by combining these two philosophical systems. However, in the late 2nd century AD, the more rational peripatetic philosophy was somewhat overshadowed by the emergence of the mystical Neoplatonism. However, Plotinus, also known as the eternal philosopher, aimed to reinterpret and organize Plato's philosophy. He created an eclectic system by incorporating elements from the philosophies of Pythagoras, Plato, Aristotle, and the Stoics. He particularly drew heavily from Aristotle's works De Anima and Nicomachean Ethics, as well as Alexander of Aphrodisias' interpretations of Aristotle. Porphyry, a devoted student of Plotinus, attempted to reconcile Plato and Aristotle within the Neoplatonic system. In this process, certain elements adopted from Plotinus acted as a catalyst, and this tradition continued until the work of the Turkish philosopher Farabi, titled The Agreement of the Two Sages. On the other hand, Porphyry's work Isagoge, written as an introduction to Aristotle's categories, had a significant impact on medieval Islamic and Latin logic studies. In conclusion, from the emergence of Neoplatonism until Ibn Rushd, who is considered a true Aristotelian, it is not possible to speak of pure Aristotelianism. Logic was taught in the pre-Islamic period, leading to the translation of some works into Syriac. However, because logic was taught solely to support religion, no significant philosopher emerged among the Syriacs. However, Syriac translators played a crucial role in the development of philosophy, particularly Peripateticism, within Islamic society. As you may recall, the translation efforts that began as a personal initiative of Khalid ibn Yazid during the Umayyad period and were initially limited to specific fields, later expanded to encompass works on logic, astronomy, astrology and mathematics, evolving into an institutionalized structure. For instance, Ibn al-Muqaffa translated the first 3 books of Aristotle's logical corpus, known as the Organon, and Porphyry's Isagoge from Pahlavi into Arabic. This introduced Islamic society to logical deduction as a distinct method from Talil, deriving new knowledge by comparing the unknown to the known, and Peripateticism entered Islamic thought through logic. From the outset, Islamic philosophers possessed accurate and reliable knowledge about the different schools of philosophy and their representatives that emerged during the ancient Greek and Hellenistic periods. Indeed, in one of his introductory works on philosophy, Al-Farabi briefly mentions the names of 7 schools of philosophy, explaining their origins, their founders, and their representatives. When discussing Peripateticism, he states, "Those whose name derives from their manner of movement are the Peripatetics. These are the followers of Aristotle and the Platonists. Because these 2 philosophers believed in educating both the mind and the body, they would teach while walking. Therefore, for a philosopher to be considered a peripatetic, they must have studied Aristotle's works on logic, metaphysics, physics, and natural sciences." Indeed, 2 prominent philosophers of this school, Al-Kindi and Al-Farabi, authored books on the titles and contents of Aristotle's works, explaining the order and method of reading and understanding these works. Despite significant differences in their philosophical systems, there are some common views that unite these philosophers under the umbrella of Peripateticism, spanning from Al-Kindi to Ibn Rushd. Firstly, the Peripatetics employed Aristotelian logic as the foundation for their philosophical views and scientific investigations. They commented on, explained, and summarized each section of Aristotle's logical corpus, the organon. Secondly, these philosophers are considered rationalists because they prioritize reason in both interpreting existence and solving other philosophical problems. In cases of conflict between reason and religious texts, they favor reason and interpret religious texts accordingly. Thirdly, one of the most important shared characteristics of these philosophers, who acknowledge the existence of God, is their effort to reconcile religion and philosophy. Fourthly, with the exception of Al-Kindi and Ibn Rushd, the Peripatetics explain the formation of the universe through the theory of emanation, in contrast to the religious belief in a universe created by God. Alternatively, they adopt an optimistic approach, interpreting creation as an eternal emanation. Fifthly, the Peripatetics hold a view of a finite and limited universe. According to them, there is no place for a void because the universe is completely full. Beyond the universe, one cannot speak of either fullness or emptiness. This also means that they reject the concept of existence being composed of atoms. The philosophers belonging to this group are considered spiritualists because they advocate for the existence of a soul independent from the body. The Peripatetics were the first in the history of philosophy to address and attempt to establish a philosophical foundation for prophecy, thus adding a new dimension to epistemology. Based on the idea that verses about resurrection and the afterlife are symbolic, Al-Farabi and Ibn Sina argue that the afterlife is spiritual. Following the Aristotelian understanding, the Peripatetics attribute the functioning of the human psychological mind to the influence of a universal and powerful intellect called the active intellect. The foundation of these philosophers' ethical philosophy is the concept of happiness. Therefore, their outlook on life and events is optimistic. According to them, the dominant value in the general order of existence is goodness, while evil is a minor and temporary state. Peripateticism, the most widespread school of thought in Islamic philosophy, is not pure Aristotelianism. The philosophical systems of the philosophers within this group are not identical. Moreover, it is not possible to speak of a standard peripateticism because the extent and source of influence from different philosophies occasionally observed in each philosopher's system vary. This school of philosophy, which began with Al-Kindi and was systematized by Al-Farabi, found its most detailed explanations in the works of Ibn Sina. Peripateticism, with its Aristotelian foundation evident in its name and represented by Ibn Rushd, faced its most significant critiques from Al-Ghazali.